Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This training that we're going to go through here tonight, since we couldn't record last week, we're going to cover a few things we covered last week just so the people that didn't get to attend can catch up. I promise you we won't be that long, but it'll be hopefully very exciting to you. This is about leadership now, so I'm not going to be talking about ProCurrency and the trader and all the incredible commodities that iPro Network has to offer. What we're really going to do is talk about the meat and potatoes of the industry of home base, and of course, more importantly, leadership. That as the great John Maxwell, if you've got to see him at our last event in Tennessee, he's also going to be attending the upcoming outing we have in Vegas, and he, as many leaders, will tell you that all things rise and fall based on leadership. Because being in this industry for almost 30 years, it's the people business. It's not the commodities business. You can sugarcoat it all you want to, but it's the people that make things happen. And when you're a leader in this industry, there are great sacrifices you have to make, but the rewards are staggering. And the greatest thing for me is to watch people succeed. So we're going to kind of jump right into this, right? So the first thing I want to share with you, if you're listening to this for the first time or you're a seasoned veteran, then you know this. Don't be afraid to fail. Be afraid not to try, right? Because as all the words on the screen kind of jump out at you, there's a couple that might, resonate with you about goals and success and creativity and ideas and research and experience. But to not try, I can promise you'll kick yourself, because coming from humble beginnings, I come from a blue-collar family. Nothing special there. Shared bedroom with my brother until my sister moved out, but I was like 16 years old when that happened. And then shortly thereafter, I ended up in a situation where I was actually staying in a friend's home my last year in high school. And then after out high school, I joined the United States Marine Corps, because really I just didn't have any options at that point in my situation. And coming from those humble beginnings, the realm of home base, especially what iPro Networking Group has to offer, anyone can become successful and anyone can become a leader. But one thing you have to understand about leadership is you can't really teach it. I mean, you can offer motivation, you can offer some education, but to be a leader, that's just a personal decision, right? Based on integrity and commitment and sacrifice and all these other things. So as we discussed last week, right, leadership, and I'll just run through this real quickly, involves establishing a clear vision, right, of sharing this vision with others so that they'll follow you willingly. In this business, the people business, especially if you're building an organization, you can't use fear tactics. You can't, beat people into submission. You've got to provide information, knowledge, and methods so that people can realize that vision. And then the difficult part is coordinating and balancing the conflicting interests of all members, right? Because remember, you're going to deal with every walk of life, especially in iPro Network. We're all over the world, right? From Australia, we're getting ready to go out to Africa, to Nigeria, and kick that off. We've already got Latin America started. Brazil's coming on board. We got our brothers and sisters to the north in Canada, and they're just crushing it. We've got people in Mexico. And, of course, if you know my history, I've been living in Asia for the last 10 years. And so when you talk about the Chinese and the Japanese and the Vietnamese and the Thais and the Filipinos, and you put all these people in the same organization, if you will, you're going to have conflicts. And leaders step up in times of crisis, right? They're able to be creative when it comes to this. And I like what Drucker's, his definition of leadership is. He says the only definition of a leader is someone that has a following. And that's the one thing we want to talk about here tonight is your following, right? By creating one. What are the things you've got to concentrate on to become successful? Because what our president, Mr. Daniel Pacheco, has put together is, in my humble opinion, take it for whatever it's worth, I've witnessed, I don't know how many companies come and go over 30 years, just shy of 30 years. But this is a masterpiece in the making, right? When you talk about all the things that iPro Network has to offer, and we're attracting people, as I mentioned, from everywhere. So if you don't have a following, you kind of got to look in the mirror, right? Because when we're talking about the e-commerce exploding into 4 trillion in the next just couple years, and the digital currency world becoming almost 5 trillion. And then you look at the colliding of all this activity. iPro Network is so uniquely positioned. And of course, that's the vision of our leader, Mr. Pacheco, and his supporting cast. Now you see on the screen here, the Impact Leadership Council. This company, bar none, has some of the greatest leaders in this industry. This collection of leadership here is really, in my opinion, second to none. And you've got several people in the picture that are accomplished, several, almost all, people who've earned a 7-figure income. And if they haven't earned it, they're on their way. So this is what we talked about last week, right? Leadership isn't management. Now this is huge, right? Because leadership and management, they're not the same, right? Let's say you have 15 people in your organization. Well, good for you. Hopefully you're a good manager because management is needed. But managers, they need to plan, measure, monitor, coordinate, solve, hire, fire, and do many things. But typically they do things, right? Leaders lead people. So if we go back to Drucker again, management is doing things right, but leadership is doing the right thing, right? Or things. And this is not a popularity contest. And so leaders make tough decisions, right? If you follow the masses, you follow the crowd, you typically stay there, right? And if you want to become a leader, you've got to be able to step out. Now, let's talk real quickly about Dr. Maxwell again, right? I like what he has to say, that a leader is one who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. So let's kind of start with one of the supreme leaders, if you will, in the United States of America, and that's Andrew Carnegie, or Carnegie, just depending on your flavor, if you will. This is a man who became the first recorded billionaire in America's history. Now think about what $1 billion was worth 100 years ago, right? He says, no man will make a great leader who wants to do it all himself or get all the credit for doing it. And that's one of the big things about leadership. It isn't about strutting around and telling people how great you are. Leaders build teams, right? They have a following, and a great leader will promote leaders that even become better than them. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is a lot of the people in iPro Network and I had done some work many years ago and kind of paved the way in some different companies. And I am by no stretch of the imagination thinking I was the best one, right? Or the greatest one. I was happy to find people that were more talented than I was. So we look here at the superior leadership of iPro Network, right? Starting with our incredible president, Mr. Daniel Pacheco, and then Carla Pacheco. All I can share with you here, ladies and gentlemen, I kind of have an unfair advantage of most people in this equation because I've known these individuals for, I guess it's 11 years now. And I saw Daniel when he first came into the industry. He immediately took charge. He immediately became the top income earner, and that put him in the top 1% category right out of the gates. And he hasn't looked back since. And he's built a global business. Now, he'll tell you it's not always been sunshine and rainbows, right? We're going to talk about failure in a little bit, but he definitely has proven himself time and time and time again. And then we've added new, by the way, this is a little clip of the new presentation you'll all be seeing here shortly. You'll see new leadership. And again, our president has the vision as we were growing to expand his leadership council. So, Esther and of course, Mr. Leto, our vice president, VP business development, Ms. Maurice Katz, and the leadership here is incredible. And that's the thing that as we get into this, the rest of tonight's presentation, is to share with you. Don't go it alone. Don't reinvent the wheel. Don't beat yourself up or beat your head against a wall trying to do it alone. If you're going to be a great leader, you first have to be a great follower. I always say if you want to be a great leader, you got to be a great student first. And I still consider myself a student almost 30 years into this, constantly looking for new material, new ideas. But I have a big filter, if you will, of allowing information coming into my head. Right? The people have to have a proven track record. They have to have the right ideology, right? They have to have the right thought process. They have to have the right, at least in my opinion, the same spiritual belief, right? So you want to follow like-minded people, right? Pick somebody that's done what you're looking to accomplish and then try to duplicate that as closely as possible. All right, so moving on, one of the greatest assets that this company has, besides the incredible product line, compensation, all those things that make up iPro Network is, you know, when you look at a Mr. Kevin Harrington, you know, think about this, because you'll go out there and you'll give presentations for yourself or your people, and people will question things, and they'll challenge you, if you will. What do you think someone like Mr. Harrington, that obviously has a massive net worth, obviously has been sold everything, not saying that he sold, but he's been offered opportunity after opportunity, right? If you're original Shark guy on the Shark Tank and you're the person who really is the grandfather of the info commercial, I mean, how many deals have come across your table, right, if you will? And so this is a guy that did his due diligence, right? He had many things to pick from, and one of the things that he's put into his portfolio now is the iPro Networking Group and the Pro Currency, and how he's excited about the positioning of the company. Well, why am I going on about this? Well, this is what's important to you. If these people have already done their due diligence, you've got to take that fear factor that people are bringing to the table, and you've got to kind of move that to the side to know that people have already done their homework. They've already done their due diligence. You need to concentrate on the more important things than still going back and forth. Is it right? You know, is it worthy? Is it legal? And all that other good stuff that people want to challenge you, because remember, they're starting cold. If you're going to be a leader, you have to commit. You have to decide, this is mine. I got a tiger by the tail. I'm not letting go. This is what I'm betting the farm on, if you will, because that's what leaders do. They commit. They don't go 50-50 or 70-30 or 80-20. They go 100% into an endeavor, and then they focus. There was a great leadership call a couple days ago with some of our leaders talking about that same subject, and they focus on what is important. And what's important in your business is learning how to be successful, right? And part of success is failure. And we covered this a little bit last week, but I thought it was important to bring it around one more time, because you're not going to be able to massively increase your pay scale without failing. It's almost physically impossible, right? Money wouldn't have value, if you will, if there wasn't trials and tribulations attached to it, right? Money has a value for a reason. It's not easy to come by. So if you don't start to learn to love failure, and I don't mean fall in love with losing, what I'm saying is, as you make mistakes, do you embrace it and then try to learn from it and grow from it, or do you put your head in the sand and go hide and pout for a while, right? Because all leaders go through trials and tribulations. They go through challenges. And if you don't learn to love the failure, to know that you're growing. Now, if you make a mistake, you're entitled to do that. Now, if you keep making the same mistake over and over again, well, that's a whole different subject. That's self-destruction. But you want to learn to start to love failure, because as you go out there, I promise you that probably 99% of the people listening to this webinar, either live or recorded, I can promise you this, and I'm not trying to brag, I've failed more than most people combined, right? And that's the reason why I got to do what I got to do, and I run around the world and have a great time, because I understand failure is only temporary, right? The lesson's still yet to come. You're being prepared. It's like you're off course, and so the failure knocks you back on course, and that's the way success works. Failure's part of the equation. It's just not the end result. All right, and we covered this also last week, but I think we want to bring it back again, because I rattled on about some other stuff, and I think we want to make this kind of a focal point of today. And obviously the title is, What's the Difference? And what we have here is a little pie chart with 3 categories, and then we have some numbers over to the left, and we have 500, 5,000, 50,000, $500,000, and $1 million. And this is a lesson that I learned from one of my greatest trainers, if you will, about the people business, who went on to become #1 on Inc. 500. By the way, I talked about that a lot last week, of who I got trained by, right? My first mentor eventually went on to become #1 on the Inc. 500, which means he was the fastest privately held company in the United States, with 27,000% growth and hundreds of millions of dollars in sales right out of the gate, right in the first year. The second gentleman who trained me was somebody who built it was the 6th original member of a company that was selling hundreds of billions of dollars a year in insurance policies. And the last gentleman I spent 13 years of my life with was someone who actually owned the record for paying the most money to the most people in the shortest period of time before the internet. And he was able to grow about 1 million people in 18 months when it was just fax machines and checks, no credit cards. So this goes back to my original mentor. And he said, well, you know, when you look at an organization, you know, there'll be people that only make $500. There'll be people that make $5 grand. There'll be people that make $500,000. There'll be people that make 7 figures. And he says, okay, so let's break it down. It's the same company that offers the same products to everybody, right? There's, especially iPro Networking Group, there's no different equation for a man or a woman, young or old, right? From one end of the world to the other, we offer exactly the same products. Same thing with the comp plan. You can choose how you want to start, but everybody gets the same options, right? They can start with the basic, go all the way up to the professional and beyond. So if the products are the same and the comp plan is the same, why is there a dramatic difference in income that people can generate? Now remember, this is a leadership call. This isn't like fundamentals and you're just getting started. This is once you grow an organization, why do some people make a tremendous amount of money and some people kind of not do so well? And that's because in a leadership role, you determine your own check. You can only recruit so many people. Now remember, at this stage of the game, the iPro Networking Group is about 300,000 people in the genealogy, right? There's already been documented people making already 7 figures. So what's the difference between somebody struggling and somebody having a 7-figure a year income? Well, it's not the product and it's not the comp plan. And what was driven home to me almost 30 years ago is, as a leader, it's what you do with the organization that you have. In other words, every day now, hundreds, sometimes thousands of people are joining the company. It's what the leader does with the people that the organization is bringing in. Are they interacting? Are they finding ways to do, you know, webinars like this, to do seminars, to do conference calls, to put, you know, a system together for their people? Have some training, and our best leaders have those things going on, and that's why they're succeeding. They're not focusing on the price of the currency or, you know, trying to recruit one new guy, right? They're taking their time and saying, okay, I've got a group of 1,000 people. I've got a group of 10,000 people. How do I make that group grow? How do I train those people? In other words, they're serving the organization they have. In other words, they're being the CEO of their own business. Right? Now, we have a president of the iPro Networking Group, but each person has their own home-based business, right? This is pinnacle, right? This is why I've always had accomplishments, is because I never thought that I worked for the people that I was representing is from their company. In other words, I was saying, okay, this is my business, and I'm going to grow my block of business, and I concentrate on the things as an owner would, as though I created the company myself. And I've done that in every company that I've ever participated with. And I encourage you to do the same thing, because this was driven home to me again and again and again back in the late 80s, that if you want to be successful, you have to step up and take responsibility and act as though you're the CEO, and all these people are in your organization. Now, they're all independent contractors, but in essence, I always tell people, you don't work for me, I work for you. I'm a leader. I'm here to serve you, right? As the master teacher was asked thousands of years ago, you know, how do you become successful? And his answer was, find a way to serve the many. So here's some of the characteristic traits of a leader, right? And there's me and one of our impact leaders, Bishop Stewart, when we were over in Japan a little while ago. So leadership, they're always forward-looking, right? They're always got their eye, you know, down the road. Not just what's going to happen today or next week or next month, right? They're competent. This is incredibly important, right? They know how to execute. Honesty. They empower people besides inspiring them. I'm all about motivation, but if you're not empowering the people, you're just kind of treading water in the ocean and there's no land around. You're just going to eventually get tired and drown, right? You set the example. I always often say that you lead by example, right? You know how to share a vision, and then, of course, lead change. So when new leaders are stepping up, don't squelch their inspiration, their passion, because you're competing. That's the worst thing you can do, is compete with your people. As a leader, you want to encourage and hopefully find people that are better than you and give them the reins, if you will, and let them run with it. And as we talked about last week, and of course, if you heard me last week, did you go out and buy a copy of each of these? Or you say, well, I read that book. Well, what was that, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago? The classic Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill is forever going to be one of the most incredible books in the United States, at least in the United States, to helping the most people become wealthy, right? It was written almost 100 years ago. Napoleon Hill, young guy, hired by that guy we talked about earlier, Andrew Carnegie. And he went out for 20 years and interviewed tens of thousands of regular people. And then Carnegie turned him on to 400 of his richest friends. Now, these are people like Schwab and Ford and Edison, and the list goes on, the people that shaped America. And he found out what the difference was, the way these people thought versus tens of thousands of regular people. It took him 20 years to write the book, yet some people say, well, I want to be successful, but if I got to read a book, forget about it. Well, you are correct. Forget about it. Leaders are readers. And remember, I talked about this is the people business, the classic Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I don't care if you read the book 7 times. I've read, like, Think and Grow Rich 26 times already. And the E-Myth Revisited, that is a masterpiece if you're a small business owner, because it explains what the gotchas, if you are, mentally, and the execution or the failing of execution. I'll give you a case in point. It talks about 3 things of running any business: innovation, orchestration, and quantification, right? Innovation is how are you producing new business? Orchestration is the execution of that business. Now, you might be wanting to blame the company for something, but my thought process would be, how are you inviting people into your network to see the company, right? And are you teaching your people this? And then the execution of how do you take an order? What are the options? And the most important one to me is quantification. Are you quantifying the win-loss ratios, right? How many yeses how many no's does it take to get to a yes? How much money are you spending? Oh, wait, you're not spending any money in marketing? What, are you crazy? If you understand the equation of iPro Networking Group and understand the tax ramifications of everything, especially if you're a small business owner, you'd be crazy not to, especially if you're dreaming of making a lot of money. As I started helping with some orphan kids way back in the day in Thailand, and I remember my girl saw the receipt. She about had a canary, because what I spent on taking kids to the beach and Easter Sunday over a weekend was like 3 or 4 years of pay. And she's like, you spent that kind of money on 4 days on kids you don't know? And then I said to her, well, in America, at least in America, you can't keep all the money you make, right? I said, so I could either give it to the American government, that's taxes, I didn't speak Thai back then, so try to keep it simple. I said, or I could give it to Thailand and help these kids out. And those are the only 2 choices I got. I don't get to keep the money. So what do you want me to do? You want me to help these kids, or you want me to just give it to the government? She said, no, give it to Thailand. I said, okay. And we moved on. So my point here, ladies and gentlemen, is leaders are readers. This is just 3, this is a drop in the bucket. You want to constantly be feeding your mind with new information, positive information, because I can promise you, if you've grown up anywhere around a TV or a radio or a newspaper, you have been brainwashed in negative propaganda. And it's just, to me, news isn't news. They just cherry pick the catastrophes and the politics of the world, and they try to exploit that because they just love to sell dirt. What you need to do is kind of wash your brain and start listening to the millionaires and billionaires that come before and get into the zone, I like to call it, if you will. Now, we talked about this last week, and again, we want to cover this, and of course, I promise you next week we'll be on a whole different topic, but we didn't record last week. So what we have here is another shot of the compensation of the new presentation, and you might have seen this before because it's similar to what we already have, but sometimes you look at the slide and you just kind of zone out because you've seen it time and time again, but do you really know what you're looking at? Right? And I remember when I first sat down with some of the leaders when I first got started, I quizzed them a little bit. I said, Mr. Pacheco, our president, I think he lost his mind because he did the reverse of what most companies do. Usually in a matching scenario, when you get paid overrides, they start with a big number and then they dwindle it down. So as your organization gets bigger, they pay you less and less money on the greater amount of people. Well, you'll never get to that equation if you're not a leader, right? So you want to be able to work 2, 3, 4 generations deep and try to cultivate some leaders, and you are, I'm almost speechless. The compensation alone just on this one element can set you free, right? To make 20% on your 3rd generation, 20% on your 4th generation, that's insanity as far as I'm concerned, because if you want to build a successful organization, especially in our compensation plan, you want to have a minimum, a bare minimum of 12. And I take 12 from the good book, right? Because that's what my ultimate mentor did, right? He took 12 and built, billions of people. But you want to do at least 12. Of course, one of them went rogue and killed himself. You know how the story goes. So, and he was the son of God, in my humble opinion, and I'd like to think we all don't think we're that. So you might want to have 20. You say, well, JR, that sounds kind of tough. Well, it's only tough if you think it is, right? You got the whole world to play with. You're talking about, industries that are in the trillions. You got to take the blinders off and understand, once you get your dialogue down, once you know how to strike up a conversation and don't go for their jugular 5 seconds into the conversation and build some relationships, 20 is not that big of a deal. And if you just taught them to get 5, they get 5, they get 5. I mean, you're talking 20 turns into 100, it turns into 500 on your 3rd generation. This is just hypothetical. And then you've got thousands on your 4th generation. You're matching 20% of their income. Well, it's great to dream about it, but you have to step up and be a leader and hone your skills, and then understand that you're going to have to replace some of the people that go to the wayside. Then here's another snapshot of our leadership bonus. Now, we changed a little bit because we heard some people here kind of give us a little insight about, you want to do all, like in this case, the minerals before you do the stone. So it's bronze, silver, gold, platinum now, and then sapphire, emerald, and diamond. Now, that's all fun, and I see people, they kind of grimace because, they're like, I'm a professional. Well, you're a professional what? Because you're clueless about the people business, because people love recognition. They yearn for recognition, right? Mary Kay built a multi-billion-dollar company by giving out pink cars, right? So recognition is paramount. If you're a leader, if you're not recognizing and you're not promoting, right, you can make a fortune if you learn about edification and promotion. If you learn nothing more than that, edification and promotion makes you an absolute fortune in the people business. Now, let's get past all that, okay? So let's just shirk that off. This is your roadmap. This is the gut check to say, how well are you doing as a leader, right? You might think you know everything and you're a bronze, right? You made it to bronze and you have all the ideas to change the world. Well, you're a bronze, right? And you might be listening to a person that's a sapphire or a diamond. That's the time to be quiet and open up the 2 ears the good Lord gave you and close the one contraption that can, halt your progress, because you want to talk instead of learn. So, and I'm not trying to be mean or condescending. It's just, this is your gut check to say, how well are you doing? Now, if you got started and you didn't even make it to bronze yet, don't worry about it. But this is what you want to do is, when you make a promotion, then you want to then focus on what is the next promotion, and nothing else exists, and quit trying to do fancy creative stuff and do all kinds of crazy marketing stuff. If you're a silver, your only focus is to get the gold. If you're a gold, your only focus is to get the platinum, and you take them one at a time. So many people, they sign up and they want to be a diamond tomorrow. Well, first off, when you make the title, the money's wonderful, but the growth you will experience will be priceless. And that's the one thing you have to focus on. And this is where you have to be honest with yourself, right? So if you've been stuck somewhere for a while, then I encourage you to go out to a leadership conference. Go get another book. Go find a way to learn some more information, because you're only like one idea and one person away in our compensation plan from a massive explosion. And again, we talked about this a little bit last week, but again, I want to hone in on this because this is such valuable information, and we weren't able to record it last week. In the realm of networking, right? When I started, there was only 20 million people in the world, in the industry. And my friend said the same things that people are saying today, right? 30 years later, the people haven't changed one bit. Oh, those things never work. Oh, it's a pyramid scheme. And they say all kinds of stupid stuff because they're uneducated. They don't understand. Now, since I started the industry, 80 million 80 million more people have joined the ranks of home-based business. Now we're well beyond 100 million people in the world in the realm of home-based business. This is what iPro Networking Group is. It is a home-based business opportunity. And somehow, somewhere down the line, someone thinks working at home became evil, that it's like you're a second-class citizen. That's what people strive for, is not to go into commuter traffic, not to go ahead and report to a boss, not to go ahead and fight, the crazy things in life where you miss your kids' birthdays and holidays and anniversaries and you come home exhausted, right? Home-based business is the best business, in my humble opinion, of any business in the world to have, especially with the power of the internet. In today's society, right, if you have access to the internet, you got a smartphone or a laptop, you can make whatever kind of income you want to make. But do realize that, remember I talked about quantification. Again, you need to know, where does the money come from? Well, America is the greatest country in the world, so everyone thinks, especially if you live there, and a lot of people want to come to the United States, but understand it's only 20% of the whole industry, right? And the industry is $250 billion. It's way beyond that, but I'm being conservative. It's $250 billion. 20% comes out of the U.S. What will Africa yield? What will China yield? What will Japan and little South Korea, right? Little South, and I'm not being condescending here, that's only 50 million people. We're 330 million people. Yet they turned 17 billion in last year in retail sales and home-based business. It's just, they're astonishing, incredibly gifted when it comes to home-based, probably out of necessity. And then, of course, when you're talking about the whole digital currency world, I read an article that said that 31% of the entire population are already investors in digital currency. So it's just insane what can happen. Then we look at Brazil down there with 200 million people. What are they going to yield? So you got this entire global paradigm and playground that you can work with, and you might be stuck wondering if you can sponsor one or two people. As Zig Ziglar used to like to say, that if you have stinking thinking, right, you need a checkup from the neck up, right? I love some of the things that the late, great Zig Ziglar used to come up with, because they were just so down to earth, and they were so simple, but they were so powerful, right? Because he was always about converting the thought process in your head to become more positive. And of course, then lastly, as we conclude here this week, we want to then remind you that if you want to be successful as a leader, remember now, we already talked about it, and as Dale Carnegie mentioned, you don't want to do it by yourself. What you want to focus on is, over the course of time, you want to build your own mastermind group. Now, in order to do that, you have to be a leader, because remember, without a following, you're not a leader, right? You're just somebody who just dreams that you're smart or important. But as we can already witness, what our president has already accomplished, he is leading by example more than anyone in the company about how to build this business. That's why I have such admiration and respect for him, because he walks the walk and he talks the talk, right? It's more important, the walking part to me, than the talking. And so he's surrounded himself with incredibly gifted people from all walks of life in different personalities, but they all have one thread in common. They're all champions. They're all champions when it comes to success. They're focused, they're determined, they have vision, they have imagination, and they have an incredible work ethic. That's the one thing that ties every single person up on this screen, is the work ethic is nonstop. They'll go that extra mile for their people, for their team each and every day. And if you want to become a leader, you have to adopt those same habits that the leaders that we see here on the screen. So remember, that's how you grow an organization where you're not even going to know. So I'm just going to spare you the anxiety here. If you grow an organization to say, a couple thousand people or 10,000 people or 50,000 people, you're not going to know 98% of the people. That's not the way it works. You don't have to worry about that. But the following follows the leaders, right? So it's a lot easier, right, when you're the lead dog and you're having incredible success, but you understand it comes with a price. It comes sometimes with eating alone, sometimes sleepless nights, sometimes working 15 hours a day. That's just the way it works, but it's not forever, right? It's not a job. And you have to stop grading yourself with the outdated educational system you grew up with that if you get 90% of the things right, you get an A. That's not the way the real world, especially in leadership, works. And then finally, build lifetime relationships, which means stop selling the people that you care about, right? Motivation is wonderful, but you want to build a long-term friendship, if you will, with the people where you have mutual respect. And if you go the extra mile and you help that person in their time of need, right? Now, we're not talking about, giving handouts, but giving handouts to people. And if you build a relationship that lasts a lifetime, as you mature in your career, it becomes easier and you grow organizations faster and faster. Now, as Mr. Delgadillo already alluded to in the beginning of this call, the company is growing like wildfire. In a little over a week, I know that I'll be in the continent with some leaders in Nigeria, in the capital there, Lagos, and we've got like about 300 or so people, I think, that will be at the event, 30 special leaders that are going to show up. And I can tell you, they're just going to take this opportunity and crush it. And then I'm headed over to Asia, and I'm not trying to brag to you. I'm just telling you the company is on the move. And so between Latin America and the merger and Europe and all these different places, now's not the time to watch the grass grow, right? So you have the opportunity to do whatever you want. So remember, leadership is not a birthright. Leadership is not something you get out of a book. It's simply a decision that you make. And then you'll grow into the role, if you will. All you have to do is be willing to accept the responsibility to say, I am the CEO of me and my business. I will follow the leadership. I will follow their teachings. Now, that's easy for me to say to you on a webinar. It was incredibly difficult for me, being a former Marine, right? I had a very thick head and very opinionated about certain things. But I remember my mentor one time in a seminar said, how big's your stack? And I'm like, stack, I don't like pancakes. He goes, no. He was alluding to how much money did you make. And I remember he cornered me one time and he said, how was your stack last year? And I said, it was 30,000. And he said, for a month? I said, no, for the whole year. And he said, I made 8 million. And I went, ooh. He said, what if you only got 10% of what I'm trying to teach you? Remember, this is the beginning of his success. And I started to get the point. You want to be able to follow the leadership. You want to make sure you get on all the webinars, listen to the recordings. If they tell you that this is what you need to do, if you got to buy a book or listen to a recording or go to an event, find a way. Don't find an excuse, find a way. And then as you start to adopt those good habits, you'll build a lifetime of relationships with people because they will respect you. You don't have to worry about everybody liking you, but if you get everybody to respect you, not everybody, that's impossibility, but you only need a few people. If you really, truly dig into the compensation plan, which is next week's webinar, we're going to talk and we're going to break that down. We're going to talk about, being a leader and what do these things really mean? How do I really grow an organization? How do I focus my time where I can maximize my money? And you focus on that, and that's going to be next week's topic. That's going to be the determining point because I can promise you this, you can dream. It's a wonderful thing to dream and have big dreams, but then when you start to execute and the money comes, it will change you for the better unless you're a jerk to begin with, right? Because they say money is going to make you more of what you already are. And I'm guessing because you're here and because I know how incredible the leadership is and their spiritual belief, their integrity, their honesty, and the way they've built their foundation, you're a good person. And so if you're looking to be successful, you have to get after it like there's no tomorrow. Tomorrow never comes, right? So I would just kind of cancel myself out there. What I'm saying is what the slide says, creating your future today, this moment. It's simply making a decision and then having the integrity to follow through on that decision makes you a leader. Doesn't mean you're going to be a millionaire overnight, but over the course of time, especially with all the components that a lot of people don't really know where this company's going, right? If you really had a crystal ball and you could be in some of the leadership meetings and understand the plans that Mr. Pacheco has for this opportunity, the growth we're going to experience, the lives we're going to change, and the people that are going to make the most money, and you can just cut to the chase, It's the leaders. That's the way the compensation plan is designed. You have to cater to the people that are going to build your business. Everybody has the same opportunity. So remember, the difference of somebody that's going to make a couple $100 and a person that's going to make a couple $100,000 is simply how they're going to treat and work with their organizations. So that's it for this week. I appreciate you paying attention. And as always, I wish you all the success in the world. Until next time, God bless.